BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello everyone. Everyone's favourite Iniesta from Mitcham here. I'll be back with a question for Crouchy. But before the fun starts, my first job is the language warning. So the following podcast contains adult themes and some naughty words. Basically, all the stuff that makes you smile.
Don't know if I'm supposed to say that.
We've just broken down the technicalities of picking balls out of a bowl.
I'll give you the option now, Crouchy, that you could live to 100. Would you go for it?
Make my way downtown, just doors and homebound.
Vanessa Carlton!
Bex has sent you a message. Ed Sheeran's written you a song, but Mr. Islam said happy birthday. That's the real win.
Vanuatu, 166th in the world.
God, who do I go with this?
You're going to have to say something quickly.
Welcome to another episode of That Peter Crouch podcast with me, Peter Crouch. Series 5 up and running. Tom Fordyce and Chris start with me as usual. You right, boys?
You're very dark today, Chris. I can't see much of you. What's going on?
I don't know about you boys. I like to have a couple of beers with this. Last podcast where I played the piano woke them up.
Beautifully, it has to be said.
That was my argument. It's an odd way to start the podcast, but I don't want to start in a negative. But she basically said, "What the fuck were you doing at midnight playing the piano?"
And you replied, "Carlton."
But when we record this, it's really late, and we've had a couple of beers, and my house isn't that big. So for this podcast, I've had to huddle myself away in a little corner and just try and keep the noise down a bit.
But how difficult is that? Like, how do you explain that?
Like, I think it's a bit like Abby to a certain extent. Like, she knows that this podcast happens, but doesn't really understand much about it.
Trying to sort of say to Ab that I needed a nun's outfit off Amazon because I was going to sit in a pub and do a podcast. That was a difficult one to explain. Just something she didn't really understand.
I think we have to go back to the start of this pod, boys, because there was a voice there that we haven't heard since Crouch Fest all those months ago. Actually made me feel quite emotional, Chris, to hear Mitcham's own Andres Iniesta.
The thing is, right, he does look like Iniesta, and then it's very funny when he has that voice that he has because he's from Mitcham. Surely you've got to try and make slightly more effort to sound or embody Iniesta.
But I think that's why we like him so much, is the fact that he's sticking with the Mitcham accent and not changed anything really. The last time in the Samrat, I believe he had a Messi shirt on.
That's right.
I do love him though.
It is good hearing him, and so he'll be back later on with a question, won't he? So I'm sort of intrigued as to what that would be. You bailed on last week's question, Crouchy.
It didn't sit comfortably with me.
It unsettled you, didn't it? You were visibly unsettled.
Like I said before, like I get the whole role play things, but being somebody is slightly different.
Do you reckon anyone ever pretends to be you in the bedroom? No, Crouchy. Do you reckon there's
even
a lady
Crouchy
out
doesn't
there?
pretend to be Crouchy.
I mean, like, I don't know what I would do if I was asked to be like, just for one night as a treat, can you be Crouchy? Like, what would I do?
Yeah, but that if Ab suddenly said to me, you know, can you be Fordyce for this evening? I'm just going to come in one night with a pair of shin pants on and go, it's Stark night.
Friday night is Stark night.
Oh, God. Okay, good. This is going to be a good podcast today. I can feel it in my bones.
The episode, boys, we should actually say, bearing in mind we've already taken about 18 different diversions, we should actually say what today's episode is about. It's about the youth team.
Those 2 years between 16 and 18 were the best. I mean, you cannot to leave school and then just go and play football every single day. And granted, we're not earning good money. I was on £45 a week at the time, but it was so much fun. We were doing what we loved, and we had the opportunity to eventually make it. Hopefully,
in terms of the freedoms you get and the fact that you're hanging out with your mates all the time, you haven't really got proper responsibilities, and you're going out for the first time. You've got a bit of cash in your pocket, but not loads. Yeah, youth team, I think, is football university.
From 16 to 18 was those 2 years of youth team football, and you play on a Saturday before the first team play at 3 o'clock. You play at 11 o'clock. We train every single day, exactly like the first team do. We had jobs, you know. I'd clean boots. We'd clean out the showers. We'd take the kit in. and it was all a great grounding, and I just absolutely loved it. I arrived at Spurs Lodge at the training ground at 8 a.m. The first team used to come in, train and be gone by 1 o'clock, but we would be there till it was dark and loved it. I'll be getting home at sort of 8, 9 o'clock at night because I lived in West London and I was training in Essex. I absolutely loved every second of it.
I'm excited to get into this.
This is going to be a good episode. I want to hear some stuff about David Ginola as well, Crouchy, because you cleaned Ginola's boots, didn't you, at Spurs?
That's right.
Magic. Well, listen, everyone has been passing the pod for us boys already. Start of Series 5. Big thank you from all of us for these imaginative ways people have found of putting the word out and about. I've had a message on email from Ben. I want to shout out Sam, who was a guest speaker at my uni lecture. He told the lecture theatre that his business would be, quote, back stronger after COVID, and then finished by passing the pod. What a legend.
That's class.
I've noticed back stronger is used so many times, right? And then we get tagged in these posts.
Yeah, we do.
You see it so often. Now, I don't think they've done it to necessarily pass the pod, but it'll be news of a player's injury and everyone will be piling in the comments underneath going, good work for passing the pod, though. Star striker's gone, but, good work. Good work, Everton.
We're still looking to get a bit of traction on our slogan from last week, the eat out to lout out slogan. So I don't know if people can perhaps maybe write to their MPs.
Help out, loot out. Because if you loot out, you're spending money in establishments and you're helping out, to get people back on track. So loot out, you help out.
Particularly with the lout, because of course you're buying 2 separate beverages there. You are buying a stout and a lager rather than one drink. So basically you are doubling the takings of the establishment you're going into.
And the government will pay for one of those drinks. That's
probably the scheme.
Rishi Sunak will subsidise one of those drinks for you. As far as I know, at the time it's recording, this isn't happening. So don't kick off if.
Don't rule this out though.
But don't rule it out. Yeah, I agree.
I've got one question to raise. We've put the little teaser out, and people know that we're back stronger. And Warren Richards has gone quiet for me.
He has. Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to reach out to Warren and see if he's all right. We haven't seen his drone. We haven't seen him making videos, and I just want to say, Warren, are you all right?
That's nice. I wonder, Chris, if the reason for his absence is actually that he's planning, even by Warren's standards, a new spectacular.
Maybe that's what it's going to be, like 1,000 drones on the Isle of Wight with a robot.
Boys, there's been something that has been happening on social media that we have to talk about because of the shock value of it and the scope. It's so vast, it's so huge, even in a crowded social media space. And of course, that's been Roy Keane on Instagram.
Do you think the galleries had something to do with it?
He's never really embraced social media. And then suddenly, from like a standing start, he's launched into the most visual of all the social media apps. Just after we had, in the gallery in Gosport, had launched the Roy Keane Gallery. It can't be coincidence, can it?
Do we all believe that it's him, firstly? Is it definitely him and not like an agent or something like that? Crouchy, you're better placed here to know.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. I mean, it's got the tick, hasn't it? And I saw Jamie Carragher sort of giving the eyes, going like, here we go.
The first image is quite striking, Crouchy, isn't it?
Well, it's a dog selfie, isn't it?
But what's interesting is this is the first picture that he wants to put up.
The reason I'm not on it is I don't like taking lots of pictures of me and what I'm doing. Ab stitches me up with loads of photos that I don't want to be in.
But if you were on it, you'd be able to see what Abby puts up.
What's that thing? The story vibe that's going on. Like everything that I'm doing is filmed these days.
There's some amazing pictures of you though that she puts up. Look at this one. Look at this one.
A smoochy one.
She said to me, we'll do this photo shoot. It's just be for us. Like I'm going, well, yeah, but is it? Like, is it just for us? She goes, yeah. So I got roped in, right? I had my shirt off, and it's a private moment, isn't it? We've got the picture up. We've got the picture up in our hall. It looks lovely. That's what I thought it was for. Obviously, it went up on Instagram. And our mates, I got a barrage, about 40 messages going, have a look at this imbecile. What the hell is this kid up to now?
If Roy Keane does put up a black and white photo of his lip being bitten, I'll be well happy with that.
I would pay good money to see that, don't get me wrong. If it's someone else, fine. Yeah, I just don't want it to be me.
So I guess that's the appeal, isn't it, Roy? If you are listening to this, if you could somehow create that picture there with
Recreate the lip
human
biter.
or dog, I think either fine. Like
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Right, Crouchy, so you are training with the youth team and then someone comes over to you and you can see a conversation on the touchline. Do you know what's happening here? They're going to call one of us up. They're going to call one of us up to train with the first team. So how does it happen? Does someone just point you and go, "Oi, Crouch, you're in"?
A lot of the time, it's like, someone's dropped out of training. Let's go and train with them, and it'll be someone running down like the kit man, going, "Get up there!" They're short numbers, so you've just got to leg it as fast as you can and get into a session that you don't even know what's happening. And sometimes, honestly, that's a player's break. I remember in my youth team there was Ledley King. At the start of the day, someone would come down and say, "Led, you're training with the first team today," because he was unbelievable at a young age. He was always going to be a Premier League player. For me, it was like Chris Armstrong's just pulled a hamstring. Get the fuck
Again.
up there, basically. So, and then you've got to take your chance. And at least Led sort of would know at sort of 9 o'clock that when he was doing his jobs that he'd be training with the first team because he was deserved to be. And that was a weird dynamic because we'd all be there cleaning boots or cleaning whatever we did, or getting the kit together for the kit man, and Led would be sitting there doing his jobs as well, knowing that he would be training with the first team with the potential to play on Saturday.
how much does the manager know about you or Ledley, and how quickly do they learn about you?
It's a baptism of fire. Let me get football is and footballers are harsh. It's a harsh environment. It's sink or swim, and youth team managers were very, very strong with us. Ripping the piss out of each other was part and parcel of everyday life, really. It was a tough environment. I think when you come from school, it can be quite harsh, and then put all the sort of bullies together, if you like, and form a youth team. And I saw players go under in that environment, and I saw players thrive on it. And when I was growing up in the youth team, it was you had to have broad shoulders and take it on the chin. But I think it stood me in good stead, certainly with playing in the first team. I think that grounding of having the piss ripped out of me constantly for 2.5 years stood me in good stead for what I was to expect from the terraces and sort of carve out a career, really. But my grounding definitely was in the youth team, and at times amazing, but at times, certainly with the older boys, it was a tough environment.
When I hear stories like this, I always think, "Oh my God, what would I have been like?" Like if I was 16,
yeah.
I don't think I would have got through it. And I know players, Crouch, you always say this. I know I've spoken to a few different players who've gone through this, and they always say, "Oh, well, yes, it made me stronger." And I think, yeah, I'm sure that's the case. But my heart always goes out, Chris, for these lads who were brilliant footballers, but maybe couldn't cope with that side of it.
You've both just said so much stuff to unpick there. But it sounds like even at this age, what you're talking about, Crouchy, and I think what you're also suggesting, perhaps me and you didn't have, Tom, is you don't just need the skill. You need to have this certain headspace and be a certain strength of mind at that point in your life to be able to have this as a career. Is that fair to say, Crouchy?
100%. And I think what is so sad is what you're saying, Chris, is I saw more talented people than me fall by the wayside because of this mental strain that was sort of put on them, really. And I saw fantastically gifted players not be able to deal with what was being thrown at them. And sometimes these players were coming over from Ireland or coming over from a different country or a different environment, coming down. I was at Tottenham and players were coming down from Birmingham, coming down from Manchester, and they were thrown in digs and sort of, left to their own devices. And you think if training doesn't go well, they're in these houses and stewing on their own away from their families for the first time. And when I look back at that now, I feel like that, football's changed for the better. I mean, that was hard. And there was some serious players in that group as well that I think didn't make it because of how hard it was and how tough it was mentally. And, like I said, it was sink or swim. There was plenty that didn't swim.
If we stick with that little time frame just there, then just on what we're talking about, how would you see it about how you look back on yourself in that environment?
My whole personality has been shaped by the environments as everyone else has, it's been shaped by the environments that you've been in. So my environment was quite harsh. Certainly my first school was very, very nice, and then I went to secondary school, and it became a bit tougher. It was basically big, tall, skinny, lanky. I was getting, bits, and my defense mechanism was to laugh at myself first before someone else could, and to try and be witty. If I said it funnier than someone else said it before them, what have they got? So then I became sort of like, oh, he's a good lad, he's funny. And that was my defense mechanism away from someone else being harsh to me. And then with football, I always had, actually, he's at Tottenham, he's at QPR, he can play football. And then when I played, everyone went, oh, okay. And then it's like with kids, you get respected. If you can play football, you're respected. And that's what happened to me through school. And then obviously getting to an elite level where I was training with top kids, and they were from all different backgrounds. And I can't claim to say that I'm from a tough background. I had a nice, lovely family, but a lot of these kids come from tough backgrounds, single families, and I was training with them. So I've gone from school to elite level training football on a Tuesday, Thursday night, the ball court at White Hart Lane, kids from Tottenham, kids from East London, kids from all over London, and kids from all over the country, really. And I'm in there, and I was too nice. And my dad, thankfully, my dad was clued up to it, and he said, "You're being too nice," and I had him behind me to help me really with something that I was finding very difficult. And I did change. My mentality changed, and I became sort of a man quicker than if I'd have gone to do my A-levels or go to uni. But the person I am today, and the fact that we laugh and joke on this podcast, is because of that. And I wouldn't change that, because, that's why we do this podcast, and it's good fun.
Tom, it sounds like this youth team time is where a lot of the forming happens.
Similar to you boys, though, you boys have had a goal, haven't you? I have to go to my A-levels, I have to go to uni, I have to do this. Whereas you've gone, right, I want to be on Radio 1. Tom, you're the same. You've wanted to be chief sports writer at BBC, that you want to be a writer. So you've both had goals, and I think you've got to a top level yourself.
I always had my own personal goals. I was also there in my school hall watching you on TV playing football. I feel like it's insane that we get to do this podcast and get to chat and open up your brain, Crouchy, because it's just never a scenario I thought I'd be in personally.
Well, yeah, we talked about David Ginola, didn't we, at the start of this program? Because I know you cleaned his boots, Crouchy. This was a massive rite of passage for players, wasn't it?
Yeah, years and years. I mean, it was doing the jobs. My scenario was I grew up in Ealing, and then I would travel to White Hart Lane. I'd help the kit man at White Hart Lane load the kit onto the van, and then the van would drive, and two or three of us from West London would sit on the bus and drive to Chigwell, Spurs Lodge. And then we'd get there before all the first team players. We'd park in the bottom car park. We'd walk up, and then we'd get to our jobs. And someone would be on the canteen helping clearing plates away. Someone would be on the first team dressing room. We'd all have our own boots. You'd have to do them early. I had David Howells and I had David Ginola. You'd build up a rapport with the person that you were cleaning boots, and you'd find out, the way they liked it and stuff like that. And I mean, a couple of great stories, like David Ginola, unbelievable. I watched him. We had 2 season tickets. I was on Genola's boots, and I remember his agent went mental because I was just putting black polish on them to cover it all up. His agent went mad because the Nike sign was getting blacker, darker and darker, and you couldn't see it. And but yeah, I mean, he went on to win PFA Player of the Year, and I'd like to think I had a hand in that.
That's insane, isn't it? That someone from Nike has obviously contacted the agent. Like that chain of events is awesome, isn't it?
It's come from the top of Nike, through David Ginola, through the management, down to the youth team manager, to me, who's just scrubbing away in a little fucking the back
little boot room,
the little boot room in Spurs Lodge.
what boots were they? They weren't molds then, were they? So
Well, yeah, no, because Genola he'd always wear molds in training. He was,
they were.
he was a flair player. But I was on Howells as well, and Howells used to he had the blue high-techs. He used to like the studs. But one particular day, I was training on the bottom pitch, and one of the first team coaches came down and was like, David Howells hasn't got his boots. He said, you need to get up here. I've had to leave training, go back up to the top pitch. The first team are warming up. Les Ferdinand, Genola, Rule Fox, Chris Armstrong, Darren Anderson.
Soul.
Yeah, Big Soul was there. And I just saw David Howells was running with them, but with trainers on. You can imagine. I told you about how harsh it was. Well, I had to go into the group and jog around with them. Whilst David Howells was abusing me. Oh, it was a bad one. And I don't know where they've gone. And I don't know whether, to this day, I don't know whether one of the lads was winding me up or what, because I'm certain I put them in his
we can find out.
The mystery of Howells' boots.
The curse of David Howells' boots. Were these boots lost by Peter Crouch, or were they stolen?
Who are the suspects?
Question, Chris. Very good question. Go first team, first of all, Crouchy. Let's think about that Spurs first team. Who were the jokers?
Rule Fox.
I've actually got the Spurs first team squad up. If I could quickly rattle through some of these first team players, give me a yes or a no. Yes indicating
potential. They
may be a potential suspect. No, you're definitively ruling them out. Ian Walker.
Yes.
Stephen Carr.
Yes.
Stefan Freund.
No.
Alan Nielsen.
No.
John Scales.
Yes.
Tim Sherwood.
Yes.
Chris, can we just clarify? Just go. We didn't have many no's there.
It's a lot of work to be done.
There's a couple. There was Alan Nielsen. Alan Nielsen was the only person that I knew that ran to training from where he lived.
Where did he live?
Good miles away. I mean, he'd do 6 or 7 miles before training. Then he'd train and he'd run home.
Kante used to do that, didn't he? I seem to remember he was someone who ran to training. Does that impress the manager, by the way?
No, I mean, literally, with Alan Nielsen, it wasn't even about, it was just, he didn't feel training was enough for him.
That's amazing.
One of
it's
the
a little bit parched, don't you think? Isn't that the kind
I
of...
know what you mean.
It's like, okay, we get it. You ran to training. It's like...
Parched-like behaviour.
The story about Kante, I don't know if he ran to training, but there was certainly a story when he was in France, when he was either at Boulogne or Caen, that he used to take a scooter. He would literally have the sort of scooter that you put one foot on and then use the other foot to go along with.
Really?
And he's not a big man, N'Golo Kante. He's 5'5". Sometimes I like to think of N'Golo Kante on his little scooter going through the streets of Boulogne on his way to training.
I guess that's the thing with the youth team, isn't it? I suppose none of you really had proper cars at that point, so...
Well, listen, the cars in the youth team are a whole different story.
Explain.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had obviously very shit cars, and we were going to training grounds where there's Ferraris and Porsches and things like that, and so we're on 45 quid a week. I managed to scrape together a few quid. My mum and dad helped me, and I was the first to pass my test, so I had a mint green Polo. Got the wheels, got the rims on it, managed to get a decent sound system, and I had 3 in the back and 1 in the front. We're all big fellas as well, and there was literally we'd scrape as we went over speed bumps, and we had so much fun in that car. Though we'd have a few tunes, or we'd have the garage tapes on. DJ Luck MC Neats blaring out the DJ EZ on the mix. And we'd fly into the training ground, and great times. Do
you know, that's a tune, by the way. Like we didn't even think of Luck and Neat, Little Bit of Luck, at Crouch Fest, but what a shout that would have been! Like, I still think that's one of my favourite songs ever. You know, Crouchy, you must be able to nail this.
A little bit of luck, I can make it through the night. All over the rinsing sound, all over the rinsing sound, all over the rinsing sound, all over the rinsing sound. Tanani, 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 tin boy. Tanani, 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 tin boy.
Yeah, not a fucking clue what he's saying, but It was such a good song, wasn't it?
No, but there was so many though. There was so many belters in that day, like the Iron Apple era. DJ, DJ EZ, Spoonie, Sharky P on the MIC. I mean, that was the era of the mint green polo.
But who's in the car?
Ross Fitzsimon, Narada Bernard, Gavin Kelly.
So who was the second one?
Narada Bernard.
Is that a real name?
Narada Bernard.
Yeah.
Great name.
Okay.
You know, we were born on the exact same day. Good player. He went to Arsenal for a bit. Gavin Kelly was a young Irish goalkeeper we used to call the chef.
Why?
Just well, it's a long old story.
You've got to explain, surely. Or is it one of those where it's better not knowing? Let people use their imagination.
I think he's better. I think he's better not knowing. Do you remember that? Oh, there's
the chef. Tom, the chef.
Where's your mind going with this, Chris? Why is he called the chef?
Like, in some ways, with these names, like I like not knowing the exact story because your mind wanders.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
chef.
Remember this bad boy?
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
It's my ooh. It's my ooh. Crouchy P on the MIC. We're doing this not for free. We're doing it for the massive. We're doing it for the crew. Bring up now. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Bring up the crew.
Great.
That with those headphones is an amazing combo.
We should appeal. Can we maybe we can get DJ Luck and MC Neat to do the swear thing at the start of the pod, but in a garage style.
Oh, please.
Just a quick one here. Like, this is what I'm talking about for Crouch Fest when we can, just to give everyone something to look forward to, right? This bit, Crouchy.
Here we go, Crouchy. Count yourself in.
Yeah.
Nothing with anybody right. The reason wanted nothing with the bad bass line. Bad bass line. Bad bass line. Bad bass line. Here we go.
Yes. I can't wait. We're going to park up a green Polo on the stage, and this is going to be amazing.
The U2 Massive, because the U2 Massive flow.
Crouch going for the spectacular. Oh, what a goal from Peter Crouch!
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Were you instantly pally with players like that, or was there an element of sort of fear or revering these kind of more established players and well-known players?
But the thing is with those players, there was no nastiness whatsoever. Like, my biggest influences almost in that dressing room were, they weren't the David Ginolas, the players, Darren Anders that were playing every week. Like, they were the players that did drop down to the reserve team and help out. Raw Fox, unbelievable, and he was so good with the young players. Like, he was brilliant with us, and none more so than Les Ferdinand. When he's Sir Les for a reason, because when he dropped down for the reserves, he had the same sort of impeccable standards that he had in the first team. When someone like Les Ferdinand's standards are that high, you have no excuse to not be at that standard.
When you say standards, what do you mean?
When you were on the jobs at Tottenham, you'd go into the first team dressing room and you'd pick up all the gear and you'd get it in the bin and you'd wheel it out for the kit man. That was part of your job. But I always remember when I had that job, I'd go to Les's spot and he'd have his everything would be folded in a pile and his boots would be underneath the bench, and just little things like that just made him a different level. And even when I was struggling, I was never going to make the first team at Tottenham. I had Les Ferdinand in front of me, Chris Armstrong, Stefan Everson, Paul McVeigh, Neil Fenn, James Bunn, all younger players. Tottenham wanted to get a player in from Dulwich Hamlet and they wanted me to go on loan there. And I said, well, I'm not sure, it's non-league. I don't really want to do that. And I was speaking to David Pleat and Les was just like, stopped his conversation and said to David Pleat, I think he's better than where you're sending him. You need to get him a league club, this and that. And then David Pleat was sort of explaining his
what does David Please say to that?
I mean, this is Les Ferdinand. Do you know what I mean? He's got weight in the football club. So David Please I was watching him sort of explaining the reasons. Not trying not to buzz too much. The fact that Les is stuck up for me. And yeah, it was amazing sort of watching that conversation, and it just took 5 seconds out of his day to sort of make me feel good, really.
Crouchy, with players in the youth team, like well-established players then, so let's say you're training with the youth team and then you start mingling with the first team, right? Do you instantly call them by their first name, or do you have to address them a certain way, or what was the kind of protocol with that?
A lot of the lads called Darren Anderson Shaggy, for instance, right?
After the character in Scooby-Doo, we should clarify that in case anyone was thinking that there's any other reason why Darren Anderson may have that nickname.
No, it's because
that would be Shagger, wouldn't it, rather than Shaggy?
Exactly.
There was a
big difference. But listen, I can't. How can I come up from the YouTube and start calling someone Shaggy? Especially when I look more like Shaggy than he does. But I mean, the one that killed me as well for a long time was obviously I was on David Ginola's boots. Was it David or was it David? So I didn't want to go too continental. Now I'm calling him David Ginola now, and you're just not batting an eyelid. But for me to go into the dressing room and saying, "Are you finished with your boots?" David, you don't know what do you call it, David or David? You don't, I've grown up with David. It's hard.
I think we can all say he was a very handsome man, and possibly still is a very handsome man.
Yeah, I mean, he really was. I mean, he didn't tip me at Christmas. Let me add.
What? Because
what do you mean? What do you mean tips? What's the
swoosh issue or?
No, so I'm doing the boots, aren't I? And obviously he didn't know what the crack was with.
But what's the protocol here? I don't know about this. So the protocol as a youth team player is that the player that you're associated with for cleaning their boots, they'll sling you what?
Little cash tip. I think the going rate's probably about that 50, 60 quid. Howells give me 60 quid. I remember David Howells give me 60 quid.
Was that before or after that you've lost his boots?
No, that was after, actually. Good as gold, David Howells. Brilliant.
Because legitimately he might have given you, 20, 30?
I didn't deserve anything that year. But like one of those where you just keep going past, like when it's like, there's a girl you like at at work or something like that, and you just keep walking past her and going like, yeah. I kept walking past and smiling, going like, this is the day.
You had a really good game on Saturday, David.
Finally, it got to the stage where, I was the only one really didn't have a tip off the PFA Player of the Year. I was thinking, that's just a strange one. Like, what's going on? But anyway, Les pulled him and said, you got to, and he just didn't have a clue about the etiquette of tipping your boot.
I mean, he
boy,
says that, Crouchy. I'm starting to wonder, if we return to what we might call the mystery of Howell's boots, if maybe David Ginola wasn't involved in this, some sort of, because of the swoosh thing, he's thought, I know how to get this young lad back. And he's just taken David Howell's boots and just popped them in a bin. And he's watched you suffer. Because without wanting to make you sound like an old fart, Crouchy thinks the old days were better. Like, young players now don't do what you did for David Ginola and David Howells and clean boots. Like, are they missing out in any way?
How else can you build up a rapport with a first team player like you do? I remember Ledley King was on Sol Campbell's boots at Tottenham, and he cleaned them.
Master and The Apprentice.
Yeah, literally like that. Sol was an absolute lead playing for England, and Ledley wanted to be where Sol was, and those little tiny conversations, they might be about boots or change of studs, but they might lead on to how you're playing, and you build up a rapport, and I don't know that it's much better now than it was, but I think that part of the game, doing the jobs and doing around the dressing room and keeping you grounded, is definitely, it was a good thing certainly when I was starting out.
Tom, I think you've summed this pretty much this whole episode up beautifully by saying about the master and the apprentice. What is the best bit of advice that you got as a young youth team player from a real legend in the game?
I always remember going up to train at Tottenham with the first team quite early on in my life. And after the session finished, I think it was David Ginola, Chris Armstrong, Stefan Everson, and myself stayed behind to do some finishing. And I was so excited by this whole scenario. The coach was picking the balls in to us on the edge of the box. We had to have 2 touches. We had to keep the ball outside the box and finish. And it was a bit of a comp. I was walking up to the box and I was just like, sort of just jogging on the spot, ready for the ball to come. I remember David just sort of tapping me on the shoulder and going like, why are you moving so much? And he just said, just calm down. Go to the back and just watch me. And I was like, okay. And the ball came in, and instead of having 2 touches, he just had 1 and like put it in the top corner on the volley from outside the box. And then he walked back to me and just gave me like a Gallic shrug. Wow. Like I think I almost had a bit of an erection.
That's a great bit of advice, isn't it?
Just repeat that phrase.
I had a bit of an erection.
No, not that phrase. the one that David said to you. I understood that you had an erection.
You had a stiffy, Crouchy, but
I'm just looking for
Tom's
David
right.
Ginola's line.
Oh, mate.
Just repeat what David said to you.
No, he just tapped me on the shoulder and he just said, just calm down, relax,
Okay.
Watch me. And just watching him hit this volley into the top corner, and then it wasn't sort of like what I was doing. It was just like basically just told me just to chill out, relax. You can't play if you're this hyped up. Just like, and it's something that I took in, and that is a practice that I did from that day all the way through my whole career. And watching him do it, and can't even tell you how good he was as a footballer.
So Crouchy, that bit of advice has stuck with you the whole time, yeah? So
Yeah,
have you passed that on to any other player?
The way that I looked at it was little tiny things mean a lot to players of a young age. So that little moment with Les Ferdinand when he walked past me and David Pleat stayed with me forever. Those little things. So I just know what it's like, and that's how I've always tried to be as a footballer, because you sort of realise, how much little things mean to kids of a certain age, and that's why, when you walk past kids in the street or at a football match, when they ask you to sign something or they want a picture, like I've always tried to make time for them, not because of Mother Teresa, but because I remember how much it meant to me when I was at that young age, and I've always tried to stay as true to that as I possibly can. Because I remember, I've still got a picture of me and Justin Channing, who's a fullback at QPR. And not many people will know unless they're QPR fans. But I've got that. I had that photo framed, and I've still got that that's still on my bedroom wall in my mum and dad's. Me and Justin Channing. That meant so much to me at that time.
That's the funny thing about it, is you're so right in what you're saying. It's not even necessarily about the most famous football player. It's just a moment, and it was at a time of your life, and it brings back memories. And it would be great to hear from people what that is. It's a hard one to describe, but
it's the Channing moment, isn't it, Chris? It's
yeah.
your Channing moment. What is your Channing moment?
I remember meeting Gifton Noel Williams, and I just thought this guy was the best proper striker for me. Like, at a time where I was falling in love with a club that, obviously I'm going to be with till I die. What about you, Tom?
What's your Justin Channing moment, Tom?
Yeah, what's your Justin Channing moment?
I loved Chris Waddle as a player so much. There was a point when Wednesday have lost 2 cup finals to Arsenal in the same season, which still breaks my heart. Waddle scored a lovely equaliser, and he's walked off at the end after Andy Linnigan has scored the winner in the 119th minute. And he's doing the old footballer's clap above the head. And he's looking at us all, and we are in pieces. And you looked at Waddle, and he's in pieces. And there was a moment where clearly he's not looking in your eyes. He's looking at a mass of fans. He's looking at thousands of fans in blue and white shirts. But there was a moment where you delude yourself that he's looking at you going, I know exactly how you feel.
With Chris Waddle, I just absolutely loved him. I think he's a seriously, not underrated at the time because he was a genius at the time and everyone knew it. But I feel like now, like, people don't realise how good Chris Waddle was as a footballer.
Just stick in YouTube, Chris Waddle, Marseille, and just watch his goals, his mullet, beautiful. The shirt.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do then, boys. If you text me over some of your Waddle clips, I'll do a bit of research as well. And then If you do need homeschooling for your kids, Chris Waddle is the subject this week. Do what
How
you can.
much better is Chris Waddle to learn about, seriously, than, algebra?
I feel like this podcast has been fun, but we're not going to have that much time for many emails, I don't think.
We better squeeze one in. You're right, Chris. I've massively enjoyed this episode. What about this one? We had a message from Finn, who is studying at Lancaster Uni. If you had to build your own slide, A, where would it be built? B, what type would it be? And C, what would you call it?
Oh, would you mind if I don't want to phone a friend or anything, but I want to ask you.
When you're an away fan and your club are playing Newcastle and you have to walk up that stand, it's so steep.
It's so high.
You're saying have a slide from the top.
You could conceivably see that go down to the riverside and then maybe
Straight into a
beyond
bar.
plunge down to Quayside as well. Almost like a sort of a black run at a ski resort.
That's a great idea. Right, let's try and make this happen. St James Park ski lifts. If Alan Shearer really wants a legacy, that's what needs to happen. A ski lift.
The Shearer slide.
What a dance move that sounds like.
I mean, Ashley A's not getting behind it, and in some weird parallel universe where he greenlights it, he'd obviously want his branding all over it.
Well, they want to sell. He wants to sell to a sheikh, doesn't he? That's got a sheikh written all over it.
That is very, very Abu Dhabi, isn't it? That's very Dubai. I mean, Dubai's got the biggest indoor ski slope in the world. They've probably got the equipment.
Sell it, get someone in, smash a ski lift in or a slide straight down to the boozer. Job done.
Great.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Hello again, boys. I've had a long time to think about this.
Oh, God.
Life's a bit slow for lookalikes during a
I
pandemic.
could listen to him all day.
So, Crouchy, after I asked you for a photo on holiday that time, if you could choose to have a photo with anybody in the world to take pride of place in your living room, who would it be?
That is a tricky question, that for you, Crouchy.
Who would you have?
Well, for me, for example, if I could get a picture with anyone that would go up in the living room, it would probably be Elton John. Just a legend, isn't he? If he was, especially now I'm playing the piano a bit as well.
You've got a connection.
Yeah, just everything matches up a bit.
I get that. I totally get that.
I think maybe for rarity value, maybe I'm thinking Kim Jong-un of North Korea, because no one has got a selfie with him, have they?
Dennis Rodman has.
Dennis Rodman has, you're right, yeah. That's a whole new story.
Who do you think will get their picture first? Me with Elton John or you with Kim Jong-un? We should do a race.
I mean, you could conceivably get yours with Elton within a week.
Crouchy, you come up with one as well and we'll all race.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to go Barack Obama or something like that. Would be.
Obama would be great. Obama's a great. If you have a picture with Obama, it's just great, isn't it?
I just see Obama Michael Jordan or something. Michael Jordan would be pretty epic. But I'm not going to lie. You know what? Football's my thing, and Brazilian Ronaldo for me. Yeah, the original Ronaldo. Literally, if I had a picture, I met Brazilian Ronaldo once, and I did get a picture, but I've got no idea where that picture is. Which is horrendous. But
what does Brazilian Ronaldo do now? Does he do punditry and stuff? Is it conceivable we could say have Ronaldo on this podcast at some point?
Wow.
Is it conceivable? Does it? But I think he doesn't do. I think he chooses not to do that much.
If he's going to do anything, he's going to do this, isn't he?
If he could be tempted out of retirement, this will be the offer, I think.
But you know what? What about if I could, Steve McManaman knows him? I work with Steve McManaman, who's a top man. Maybe
You've got an
potentially. Well, do you think I could ask Steve McManaman for him to do a language warning potentially?
Bloody hell! If you can get Ronaldo for the language warning, that's huge.
Bear with me. I'm going to try and get Ronaldo for the language warning.
Unbelievable.
You get Kim Jong-un, I'll get Elton John, you get Ronaldo. Challenge set, boys. We just need the language warning.
I got a feeling Tom's going to struggle.
Imagine if I beat you at a time where we can't even travel to Wales.
I'm going to try get Elton John.
Okay, Kim Jong-un, he's not going to do a language warning, is he? So
imagine.
What do you reckon?
Maybe
think,
to get him to ask a question.
Or a photo. If you and him get a photo, it's enough for me, I think.
Tom can either get a photo or the language warning.
I think a photo of Kim Jong-un's enough. What's my one?
You've got to get original Ronaldo's doing the language warning.
God.
Ronaldo language warning.
All
right. Good luck, lads.
Deal.
Back stronger.
In goes Crouch, and it's there. And Peter Crouch scores for England.
That Peter Crouch podcast from BBC 5 Live.
Okay, on the last podcast, I thought we could continue to share the love and advertise other podcasts that you could listen to that you might like if you like this one. And no, I'll be the first to admit I did a pretty awful job, but we did lay down the challenge and say, if you want to advertise your podcast, just come on this podcast and do the job yourself. It seems fair enough, right, boys?
I think
Sounds
so.
good, yeah.
I think so.
Sounds good.
So I'm very pleased to say we can now speak to Danny Kerr, who is here to promote his podcast. Hello, Danny.
Hello, lads. You all right?
Good. Yes.
Nice to have you on, Dan.
You're here to promote the Rugby Union Weekly, right?
I'm all here to promote myself. I don't really care about the pod. It's more me. Are you getting an ambassadorial role for those headphones, mate? They are special, aren't they?
You don't really see rugby players wearing these kind of headphones, do you? I thought that was more a footballer sort of mentality.
Every rugby player is a failed footballer. I think we need to probably establish that to start with. So yeah, here I am, lads, trying to get on finally to this proper podcast.
Yeah, Danny, you were on the books of a club in your younger days, very close to my heart.
Yeah, did 3 years at Sheffield Wednesday. Loved it, mate. I honestly, absolutely loved it. All I wanted to do when I was younger was play football. Same team as Jamie Vardy. We were there at the same age group. And then I ended up going to rugby because I went on a lads and dads tour to Dublin, and we played a bit of rugby and had a few WKDs, and I thought, this is a bit of me, this. And I ended up sticking with rugby. I see some of these Chelsea footballers around Cobham in the Lamborghinis, and I think, what did I do? Why don't I just stick it out? But I can't complain. I've had a great time playing rugby, and it's been special.
I know that you've had such a good career in rugby, but do you ever think, obviously with Jamie Vardy's career, I used to watch him at Fleetwood. You say your first love was football. Do you ever think about what could have been, maybe?
Every day, Crouchy. Every day. It's an unbelievable story, Jamie's story, and we kept in touch till he got really big time. He was still mates, and then he started playing for England and signed that $100,000 a week deal and stopped texting me back. So buzzing to see him still going, and for me, he's still probably one of the best goal scorers that England have got.
What was he like back in the day, in those days?
He was gobby. He backed himself, which is what I really liked about him. Even though he was one of the smallest, when I watch him now, he's still exactly the same, still giving it out, and but he's still got the skills and the speed to back it up, which is what he was like. What he was like as a kid. Danny,
do you reckon footballers can make it better as a rugby player than a rugby player can make it as a footballer?
I'll be honest, mate. I see a few of these players playing in the Championship, and I'm like, mate, I could do that.
We all think that.
Yeah, we are like. So I think there's that. There's definitely a lot of us who'd go, surely I could do a job. I could do a job there. When you see some of the players knocking around earning 50 a week, but no, I understand like how hard football is. Like we get the ball as soon as we get the ball out in training. Like the football comes out, the boys are absolutely buzzing. Throw a rugby ball in the warm up, and the lads are like.
What if we flipped it around, Danny, and we had to take a footballer and put them in an international rugby match, right? How's Neymar getting on?
I think he'd have to be a winger, mate. He'd have to be a winger out wide. But I tell you what, the other team would be dying for him to get the ball, wouldn't they? Maybe like Mbappe, if you put Mbappe on the wing, just out and out gas. Or maybe even Messi. You put Messi in the fly half role and he just pulls strings, sits in the pocket and kicks the corners. I'd like to see that.
We're all just dreaming about that now. I had to give some serious thought there to the idea of Messi putting on a jersey. Shit, we better get on track. You're here to promote your podcast, Danny, Rugby Union Weekly. We love it. Great podcast, right?
That wasn't the vibe I was getting last week, Chris, I'll be honest.
He's absolutely shit himself, look.
We discuss everything that's going on in the rugby world. Myself, Hugo Monye, Chris Jones, and Chris Ashton comes on every now and then. Ugo and Chris Jones, very, very serious. They take their rugby very, very seriously. And myself and Chris Ashton try and come on and have a bit of crack as well. But yeah, we talk about everything, mate, everything that's going on in the game. We like to think we're the most knowledgeable of pods.
Let's pass the rugby pod.
The rugby pod. That's what they should have called it.
There's a good one called the rugby pod. We hate that one, mate. Don't promote that. Yeah.
Rugby Union Weekly.
Listen to it now on BBC Sounds.
Cheers, lads. Thanks for having me on.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts. Radio podcasts. Radio podcasts. Radio podcasts. Radio podcasts. Radio podcasts.